All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the January 4th, 2024 Des Moines Area Metropolitan Planning Organization Transportation Technical Committee meeting. We'll call this meeting to order. And so we'll start right into it with item number 2, looking for an approval, a motion and a second to approve the agenda that's been posted.
This is Rudy, I'll move.
Thanks, Rudy.
Luis,
I'll second. John Dostard.
Oh, thanks. I think Luis beat you. Thanks, Luis. Yeah. All right, we got a motion and a second. And again, we are doing this meeting online, so we're not going to have everyone unmute and say aye. So we'll just ask anyone opposed to the motion, please speak up. But first, is there any discussion on the motion on the table? Okay, is anyone opposed to the motion? Hearing none, we'll consider that motion approved. Thank you. All right, that brings us to item 3. Let's look at a motion and a second for an approval of the meeting minutes, and those were included within the agenda that was posted. Is there a motion second on the meeting minutes, please?
This is Rudy, I'll move.
Thanks, Rudy.
John Dostard, I'll second.
Thanks, John. All right. Got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion or comments on the motion on the meeting minutes? Is anyone opposed to the motion? Okay, hearing none, we'll consider the December 7th, 2023 meeting minutes approved. Thank you. Thank you, Tracy, for sending those out and posting those. That brings us to item number 4, and that's a presentation by Mid-American Energy. Andrew, are you able to kick this one off?
I sure can. Thank you. So today we have Katie Lord. She is the Business and Community Development Manager here in Central Iowa for Mid-American Energy. She is here today to talk about EV infrastructure deployment with the various grant programs that are available to communities and other agencies and partners across Central Iowa region. I thought it was important to bring one of, if not the most important partner, to the MPO to do a presentation just on how Mid-American works with EV deployment. So with that, I'll turn it over to her and thank her for being here today.
Thanks so much, Andrew. I appreciate that. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So if someone could just confirm that you can see the slides. Hold on one second here. Oh, I don't use Zoom quite as much, so just one second. Is it working okay?
Yep, we can see your screen, Katie. Yep, thank you.
Can you? Okay, and can you see the full
It's
presentation?
currently like we could see the PowerPoint, so there's the slides on the side, so it's not it doesn't look like
so this.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Let me try to redo this here real quick. Our notes aren't too exciting though. Let's give this a try. Okay, now do you see the presentation?
Yep, now it's in presentation mode. Yep, thank you. Yep.
Okay. Excellent. Okay, thank you for bearing with me through that. I appreciate it. I wanted to give a quick overview of what we'll be talking about today, and then I have with me 2 folks which really are the experts in this area, and we'll do a majority of the talking today and will be great resources for answering all of your questions as well. We wanted to touch on a number of different topics today. As you know, Mid-American has our own DC fast charging network, so we do have some expertise and experience in owning and operating and maintaining our own, our own fleet of EV vehicles as well, or EVs, as well as our charging stations. So wanted to start off with a quick overview of that in our program in-house, just from an educational standpoint, to talk through that real quickly. And then we know there are, like Andrew said, many grant applications coming. That is a wonderful source of funding for our community partners and businesses to support the adoption of EVs and the charging station infrastructure. I'd like to talk through our process for how we can work together best to make sure that you all get the information that you need. And I do see a lot of friendly faces on this presentation today. So some of this may be familiar, but if it's not, or if you do have questions, please feel free to ask throughout our discussion as well. We did have a few lessons learned going through this process, so I want to share those. And then if a community is awarded grant funding and has an opportunity to move forward and install a new charger or multiple chargers, we wanted to walk through what that process looked like as well. So before I go forward, I'd like to ask the folks on my team that are here today or at Mid-American to give quick introductions because you will be hearing from them shortly. So I'll start with Matt Ott.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Matt Ott, project developer here for Mid-American, at least for the next couple of days here. And then I also have Adam Streeter with me as well.
Hi, yeah,
Great.
I'm the engineering manager for the central part of our state.
Adam, appreciate that. All right, I will turn it over to Matt.
Yeah, so as many of you may know, we have a fairly large DC fast charging fleet, currently 41 sites in service with 2 chargers at each location. These are DC fast chargers, or sometimes maybe referred to as level 3, varying charging capacity from 50 kilowatt chargers up to 150 kilowatt chargers with CHAdeMO and CCS port on them. We are in the process of deploying at another 9 sites throughout the state. So a handful of those hopefully early this year will be put in service, and the remaining portion put in service hopefully by middle of this year. Our focus to try to expand EV charging or reduce range anxiety throughout Iowa. Just at that time when we introduced that, there wasn't a lot of federal grants or federal money available as there is today, as there is for the CFI or RNEVI that sounds like you'll hearing a little more about later on today. So one of the things I just wanted to touch upon was just the O&M side of things, at least for the DC fast charging side. That has been a challenge for us, and admittedly, for a variety of reasons. Technology is still new and it's evolving. Hopefully, as things progress, that will be more reliable going forward. Part of that is just relying on the charging original manufacturer of that charging equipment to provide the spare parts. So there can be delays in getting those spare parts. So as your communities are installing chargers, do encourage you to make sure that you have a robust O&M agreement or plan in place to make sure that you minimize downtime. With level 2, it's usually more of a convenience charge than a necessity as it is for DC fast charging as people are progressing throughout. But nonetheless, if you do have a charger, people have a high expectation that it is available to use when they need it. So just encourage you to make sure that you're looking at your O&M, making sure you're minimizing your downtime. One of the other issues that we're seeing is just that feedback loop of chargers not being up. So for a variety of reasons, you could have issues with those chargers, whether that's a network connection issue that may say that the chargers are not working, but they are actually working. Or we've also seen it where there's issues, let's say with a credit card reader or some other piece of equipment. The charging provider says the charger is operating as normal. However, in reality, customers can't use it, which just leads to frustrations on customers' part. So that has been a challenge for us. We do preventative maintenance and to help with that, but there's only so much preventative maintenance as these are used throughout the year. So there's couple different feedback loops you can utilize, whether that's your charging provider. Let's say it's a charge point. Usually there's some type of feedback loop there that notifies you that they are down. Another that we've been using, and our provider actually utilizes as well, is like a plug share, like a driver socialized app that kind of reports chargers being down or operational. So our network provider, Shell Recharge, will actually monitor that, and if there are negative check-ins, or what they're called, it will flag, and then we'll send a tech out to look at that. So again, just making sure that you are actively managing those to ensure, as we call it, customer satisfaction, I guess. So you're going to see a lot of potentially damaged level 2 chargers, are a little more robust. There's less things to go wrong with them. So hopefully with the CFI, if that's what you're installing level 2 chargers under, hopefully you'll have more reliability than you would on a DC fast charger. I think
Thanks,
that's
Matt.
all I have on that. Thank you.
Appreciate that. So one of the key pieces of information we wanted to deliver today is to talk through how Mid-American can support your work with EV charging adoption. So I know a key piece of your application and putting together the total cost for these is what's the utility infrastructure required to serve these chargers. And so we're happy to provide you with that information. For the CFI grant application, I'm your main contact. I've included my contact information. And for a lot of you, this is the process we went through last round when you did that. Similar to that, we will request that when you reach out, please identify on a map the location of your chargers, or at least in the vicinity. I know some have very specific parking spaces already identified at an existing building, like a library or city hall. Other requests we received had maybe a park or a general location. That's fine. Just let us know. Visibly, that's always really helpful. The number of chargers and the number of ports is always critical as well for us to understand that total kW demand we could be seeing on our system. Any additional information you can provide about that charger will help us provide you with the best cost estimate. So again, just as much information as you have in advance to get to me will help me facilitate those conversations with engineering. So behind the scenes, we'll be working with Adam and his team and others to look at all of your requests and to provide you with that total cost estimate. And Adam can provide some more detail on that.
Sure. So as Katie mentioned, obviously there's generally some sort of expansion or upgrade required to serve these individual units. We would classify basically any of these chargers similar to your community building, or it's a commercial service. So what a commercial service is for us, really more than anything, delineates ownership of secondary versus as company owned or customer owned. So if we're looking for some of your sites, potentially if it's one, that's already maybe a library or a park or somewhere you may already have service, we'd encourage you to not only engage us quickly in the process or early in the process, but also your electrician. And the main driver behind that is oftentimes with some of these, the CFI level grants or the projects where it's your level 2 chargers, it's not quite as large of a demand. Many of those can actually go just directly behind your existing building service, depending on the size. And that's where it really becomes critical as well, from what Katie mentioned, where are you physically going to be placing these? Is it somewhere close to your building? Is it far enough away that maybe we do have to do an extension? And that's where, based on an individual project basis, we're more than happy to meet with you. We would consider these installations, like I said, very similar to any other commercial service installation. So at the level 2 charging level, typically these are just single phase services. So if there's existing 3-phase service, that's something we'd have to take into consideration from how are we going to actually get a single phase source to your property as well, or to this location. If it's 3-phase, then great, we're already there. And that's where we really see the NEVI chargers landing as part of that grant application. Is obviously much larger installation. And when we get into that, that's where customers own the pad, they own the secondary cable exiting the transformer to your actual meter location and anything from there. At the single phase location for these CFI applications, that's where you would still own the secondary to the transformer and to your meter socket. You'd actually own the meter socket as well. We would just install the meter. The big difference there is we own the pad since it's a much smaller footprint. If you're getting into the really larger scale, where you're installing several of these devices and we get into some of our larger transformer sizes, that's where engaging us as early as you can is beneficial. We end up, and the reason I say that is there's obviously some lead time issues associated with transformer acquisition. So Matt, I think you actually jumped on all the ongoing maintenance cost. So Katie, you can jump onto the NEVI stuff.
Well, that sounds great. Thanks for that overview, Adam. And I guess before we go forward, I think maybe we could pause back on this process, Adam, just in case anybody has any questions. Are there any questions from folks listening today about this before we go forward?
Hey, Katie, I guess I have one just to clarify. So we're talking about the grant. This whole, is it cities, say a city wants to request a charger and then the grant would help fund these costs. Otherwise, if we don't get the grant, all the costs would be on the entity requesting the charger. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep.
Would the
And
grant sorry.
We'll provide you a cost estimate. However, that breaks down between grant funds or city funds would be up to the applicant. So that your response from Mid-American would not change. It would just be up to you to what funding source you would pull from to provide the money to do the extension.
Would the grant cover 100% of the pad and the secondary service or cable and the charger itself, or is the grant a portion of the cost?
That I don't have the detail on. Andrew, do you have any greater detail on the CFI? I think it was a cost share, but I don't remember the breakdown.
Yeah, it's a cost share. I can't remember if it was 80-20 or 90-10, but it's something that we typically see on a cost share program like that.
Okay, and is that for municipalities, or can private entities use this too?
So I can go ahead and take that one too. So for CFI, that is a community-based application. Those EV infrastructure has to go to a place that is accessible by the public. However, it can go on both public or private property. So think, a gas station or something like that. But the application does have to be a community. NEVI, however, the infrastructure funding for deployment of EV charging, level 3 fast charging along the interstates, that has to come from a private business. So a community could be part of that application process, but it actually has to be generated from a private entity. So, but specifically for the CFI, a community has to apply.
Awesome, thank you.
And
Any
that's
other
a
questions? Sorry.
That's a good lead in, Andrew, actually, to the next slide. So the process we've designed for our CFI applications and working with our community partners is to have that come directly through me as your business and community development manager. The CFI application is different than NEVI in the amount of detail required and how we're able to provide you with back information. We also want to ensure that, excuse me, in working with our cities and community partners, we have a closer relationship than maybe any given business customer that may be requesting funding through NEVI. So we want to ensure that we take the time to walk through the cost estimate with you if that's requested. We're happy to do that. We want to ensure you all have the information that you need, as well as share our expertise in owning and operating our own EV chargers as well. So you will see a bit of a distinction here. So again, for CFI, you all would contact me first. I'll work with our engineering teams to get you the cost estimates that you need, and we can talk through those at length if necessary. And we're happy to jump on a Teams call, like we've done with many of you in the past. For NEVI, we've designed a different application process, and I'll let Matt jump back on and give more detail. So again, this would be a different program where businesses may come to you all as a partner for this application, but a business or private entity would be the primary applicant. This is that process. So Matt, I'll let you walk through that.
Yeah, thanks. So the Interstate did publish their notice of funding opportunity for their the state's NEVI plan towards the end of December. That's now available for applicants, again, directed for really private entities within a mile of the alternative fuel corridors, which in Iowa are essentially the interstates at this point in time. And so funds need to go to build out that corridor. And then after that corridor has been built out, then they can go through and prioritize other parts of the state. So that application period is currently open until March 13th of this year. And then awards are anticipated to be made towards the middle of this year. And as part of that application, there is a somewhat lengthy application, and as part of that, there is a utility consultation portion where applicants need to reach out to their utility to consult with them. Essentially, it's a multiple page. The applicant would fill out the first few pages, submit it to us through that email address that you see on the screen. That's received by our group, and then we will work with engineering to fill out the utility portion. That includes costs, which can go into the application. We'll submit that back to the site host that can wrap it into their full application and submit to the Iowa Department of Transportation for consideration. And so that, like I said, that's ongoing. Again, just like the CFI grants for anybody, if you were hear of any businesses or entities that are reaching out, asking questions, do encourage them to reach out to us early on and coordinate. Just, we don't want a bunch of people reaching out towards early part of March, inundating us. Happy to help where we can. Just want to respect the other work that we're working on as well. So that's currently open, and that NEVI portion covers roughly, I think they anticipate 2 to 3 years of funding. It's a 5-year funding, but where they are currently at, I think they're hoping to fund about 2 to 3 years worth of their, I think it was $50-some million.
Thanks, Matt. I appreciate that. And then last but not least, we did have just some quick recommendations. I think you've heard all of us say, engage with us early and often, and with an electrician as well, just to ensure that you're covering your own customer side of the service, those costs that you have to get to where Mid-American will join you at that charger. That's really important to ensure you have that information and you get engaged with them early on. Also, we know that many electricians here in the Des Moines area are very familiar with our service manual, which will provide them with great insight on some of the information that we may need in order to give them a cost estimate for our side, as well as for what could be required insofar as transformer pad sizing or any of those other requirements. So Adam, did you want to finish us off for today with the last few comments?
Sure. So yeah, I mean, at this point, really, if you put your name out there, put in some applications, you're awarded it, that's where we'll really go down our normal installation path. Given that this is a community-based application for the CFI, your main 2 contacts are typically either Matt Novi or Scott Enger, similar to what you deal with for any other project within your community. We'll work down that path of getting the actual formal design and a proposal out. And then, as Katie mentioned before, if there's any costs associated with this project, really where Mid-American's portion, where we stop, is effectively at the transformer. So we are sourcing that power up to your property, to the transformer. And the reason we really suggest engaging that electrician early is because everything after that, given that it's a commercial service, is going to be more in communication and coordination with your electrician. As far as the approval for the contract and payment, how that works for the EV sites, given that it's somewhat of an unknown load and unknown usage, the way we treat those is typically on a speculative use contract. So it's typically a 6-year contract where over the course of each year we would refund you 50% basically of the revenue that we receive from that. So instead of just our normal upfront 3-year revenue credit type process for a new building, given that it's a speculative use in nature, it's just done over a 6-year period, but it does allow you the opportunity to recoup some of those costs from us that may be required to get an extension onto your property. And with that, I think, Katie, we can probably open it up for some questions.
Yeah. Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Matt. Really appreciate all of your insights today and your technical expertise. It's really helpful. Andrew, that's all we had prepared for today. I think our team would be happy to answer any questions, and we're always available after as well.
Thank you, Katie, Matt, Adam, and Andrew. Does anybody have any questions for the group? Okay, hearing none. Katie, Matt, Adam, thank you all for joining us today. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. So,
Thank you.
all right, have a great day. Thank you. Thank you. So, all right, that brings us to item number 5. This is a report and a vote on the planning area boundary update. Zach, are you able to talk to this one, please?
Yes, thank you. You may recall that back in November, we had presented on the planning area boundary. So this is just an update on where we're at with that, and we've got a vote for you. But just as a reminder, the planning area boundary is required to include all the urban area boundary, which we had talked about in the fall last year, and any future growth that's anticipated to happen within the next 20 years. So we did present this at the November meetings. Since that time, the only real major change is that Polk County has decided to include all of its area in the planning area boundary. Other than that, we haven't received any other additional comments. If you go to the next slide, there's a map of what our new planning area boundary will look like. So you can see there that it does include all of Polk County. The only other areas where we made changes were based on feedback we received from Norwalk and Carlisle, where their comprehensive plans had a growth area outside of our existing planning area boundary. So you can see down there in the south in Warren County, we've bumped it out in a couple of locations. And then in just out in the Waukee area, Adele had come into the planning area a little bit. So we had to drop our planning area boundary back a little bit so that Adele was not included in our planning area. So this is our new planning area boundary that we're proposing. It's before you for a vote today. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them. Otherwise, we're looking for a motion to approve.
Zach, this is John Dostard in Altoona. Did anyone get a hold of Mitchellville to see if they wanted their little stub that goes into Jasper County included?
You know, we did not. We'll circle back with them and find out if they would like us to do that. Thanks for
Not really my place, but I figured I should ask.
Nope, that's I'm glad you noticed that. I had not noticed that, so I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So Zach, is it appropriate to make a motion to approve the map, also directing staff to reach out to Mitchellville and amend the map if needed based on that response?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Is there any other questions for Matt or for Zach? Okay, can I get a motion to I guess my suggestion off of John's comments would be a motion to approve the map with the condition that staff reach out to Mitchellville and amend the map accordingly based on the discussions with them.
I'll make that motion.
Thanks, John. Can I get a second?
Jeff May, second.
Thanks, Jeff. All right, is there any discussion or comments on this? Is anyone opposed to the motion? Okay, hearing none, that motion passes. Thank you. Thank you so much, Zach.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to item 6, a report and a vote on mobilizing tomorrow funding projections. Zach, you're able to talk to this one as well?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
This is another item that we had discussed back in November. Some changes that have come along is in the past, we had to look at the entire period of the plan for fiscal capacity. That has been changed recently. We only have to look at the first 10 years. So as far as how we looked at funding projections for this update of the long range plan, our methodology has remained the same. However, we are just going to be looking at that first 10-year time period of the plan, which will be 2025 through 2034. The funding projections that we developed and presented back in November were our federal sources, which included the STBG, the set aside TAP, and the CRP funding. We also looked at road use tax funding from the state, and then the local funding, which included property taxes and bonds. Since November, we also have done some projections on Iowa DOT funding, which we'll share with you here in just a minute. There was a summary sheet attached to your agenda, which has more details on how we came about these numbers. And again, we did present this back in November, but the annual growth rates that we have decided upon for determining our projections are listed on the screen there before you. So for STBG and TAP, we did a 2.5% growth rate, CRP funds, a 0.5%, 2.5% for raised tax funds. And then on the local side, you know, that zero might kind of jump out at you. The reason for that is that our finance committee, we presented this to them. They felt like it was important to just take kind of a conservative approach to the local funding projections, just based on some of the things that are happening at the state, things of that nature. But we did present all of these growth rates to the finance subcommittee back in November, and they did approve these rates. And so that's what we use to do our funding projections. And I believe the next slide, excuse me, shows what we're looking at for funding projections for 2025 through 2034. It looks like we'll have a total of about $2.5 billion roughly over that 10-year period, including all those sources that I mentioned, the federal sources, the road use tax funds, and the local. I would note that historically we have seen that approximately 40% or so of the local funding is used for construction. So we did account for that. You can see there in the table that we have a list of the local funding that the total local funding that's available. We also have it listed for available for construction. We'll be using the available for construction number for the long range plan. Those amounts are shown in millions. Just want to note that. And then I believe on the next slide, we have the Iowa DOT funding projections, which we did not share back in November. Same time period we're looking at. We used a 2% growth rate to project funding for the Iowa DOT using information that they had sent us over the last 10 years. But we're looking at having about, a little over $580 million available for the Iowa DOT projects in our region. Again, those amounts are shown in millions in the table. I would note that when we use the growth rates, we're not doing a straight line projection. So we determine an annual growth amount in dollars, and then we apply that to each year. So it's not a compounding effect that we're showing with our projections. I think I have one more slide maybe to note that we are still working with DART on their funding projections. Obviously, DART is working through a few things, so we're working with them over the next few months to get some funding projections, which will be included in the long range plan, and we'll share those with you once we have those finalized with DART. I believe that's all I have for the funding projections. Happy to take any questions. This is before you for a vote today.
Thanks, Zach. Any questions for Zach? Okay, hearing none, can I get a motion to in a second for approving these projections?
Rudy, I'll move to accept.
Thanks, Rudy. A second.
This is Aaron, I second.
Thanks, Aaron. All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none, that motion passes. Thank you. Zach, and I think you got item 7 as well, mobilizing tomorrow, project solicitation. This is just a report, correct?
Correct, thank you. Just wanted to make you aware that we have been working on setting up our Google form for the project solicitation process. I have a few notes on the next slide here that shows we have developed that form. We're just reviewing it internally right now. As I mentioned, our project selection will coincide with the fiscal capacity that we're collecting projections for. So we will be looking at a 2025 through 2034 time period. Again, this is a little bit different than what we've done in the past. In the past, we've asked for specific projects all the way through the end of the plan. This time, we will just be focusing on that first 10-year time period. And we'll be collecting projects under the same categories that we collect STBG funding under. So system capacity, major reconstruction, system optimization, bridges, transit, and bicycle and pedestrian type projects are what we are looking to collect. So we're looking to collect all of the planned projects that fall under these categories that are on the eligible network during that time period. I think we'll probably target releasing the Google form probably the week of January 15th, and then give approximately a month for member governments to return those projects. So it'll probably be sometime in mid-February that we ask for those back. When we do send out that solicitation, we'll have some detailed instructions in there, along with the link to the Google form and kind of what we're looking for as far as what kind of projects we would like to see you submit for the long range plan. So just want to make you aware of that, keep it on your radar, and be looking for that solicitation email to go out sometime in the next week or two. Happy to take any questions on this if you have them.
Thanks, Zach. Any questions for Zach? Hearing none. Thanks, Zach.
Thank
Be on the
you.
lookout for, looks like probably an email the week of January 15th with the Google form. Is that, so
That's correct. Yep.
sounds good. Thank you. All right, that takes us to item number 8, and that's a report on Iowa DOT 2020 to 2024 safety performance targets. Z, are you taking that one?
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks. Every year, as part of the Federal Highway Administration's Highway Safety Improvement Program, state DOTs and MPOs have to adopt and report on safety performance targets. MPOs can either adopt the state DOT's statewide targets or develop their own regional targets. For the previous performance period, the MPO has adopted the Iowa DOT statewide performance targets, but we also still monitor and look at our regional safety performance. So on this slide to the right is the Iowa DOT's 2020 to 2024 safety performance targets. Included in your agenda packet is the Iowa DOT's detailed methodology on how they came up with these targets. For the MPO, there are no penalties if we do not meet or make any significant progress towards the safety targets. Next slide, please. And this table shows a comparison of the statewide safety targets as well as our regional safety targets. So in 2023, statewide, there were more fatalities and more non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries than the previous 5-year average. Regionally, we have been seeing more fatalities and serious injuries in 2023 than the previous 5-year average. So this month, we'll bring these safety targets to you for your review, and next month, we'll bring these targets back to you for approval. If you have any questions on these targets, I can take them at this time.
Thanks, Z. Any questions for Z? All right, hearing none. Thank you so much, Z. All right, next brings us to item number 9, which is a report on fiscal year 2025 Unified Planning Work Program and Budget Development. Dylan, are you able to talk to that one, please?
Yes, I am. Thanks, Steve. It's that time of year again for us to develop our work program for fiscal year 2025. This will start July 1st of 2024. So we've got about 6 months to put this together. The budget and the work program really outlines our scope of work for the next year. So the various activities that the MPO is going to do as an organization, what our committees look like and so forth, and also the costs associated with doing all those activities. If you go to the next slide, it shows that we have to adhere to our federal requirements, and everything that we do has to make sure that we're advancing the core requirements put upon us. And those include things like the long range transportation plan that Zach just talked about, our TIP, our SDBG fundings, and so forth. There's a lot of other projects and planning efforts that go along to advance these, though, and that's really where we want to have a conversation with you. If you go to the next slide, oh, before I get to that, there's also federal highway and federal transit planning emphasis areas. These have remained the same for the last couple of years, but you can see what those are. These aren't required per se, but the USDOT wants to make sure that we're doing what we can to advance these emphasis areas. And we usually don't have any problem doing that. The work that we do really aligns with a lot of these anyway. So what our ask for you today, though, is if you go to the next slide, we're asking for what are the projects, programs, studies, research, data analysis, whatever it might be, that you want us to do. And that should say for FY 2025, sorry. What do you want us to put in this work program? And also to acknowledge too that it doesn't have to necessarily be things that the MPO will take on. If there's other efforts that are just happening in the metro, if your community is working on a corridor study, an IJR, what have you, they really want to see, they being the USDOT really wants to see those documented in the work program too. It's a work program not just showing what the MPO as an organization is going to do, but really what all transportation planning efforts will be for our planning area. But back to the question is, if there's any projects, studies, research, and so forth that you want us to do in that work program over the next fiscal year, please let us know. You can do that now, but also just send us emails or anything. Before the end of January, if possible, we'll have a rough draft probably next month of what the work program will look like. I will acknowledge that there are projects that we put in the work program and they kind of carry over from year to year, sometimes just based on staff limitations or constraints, budget constraints, and so forth. So knowing from you what you want to see helps us prioritize which projects get done because there's only limited amount of time and staff and so forth to do these activities. And at the same time, if there's things that you don't really care about that we're including in there, let us know and we will drop those because we don't want to waste anybody's time or resources. One thing I do want to mention too is last month we had a couple presentations on data vendors. And we've sent out a survey afterwards to see if this is something you want us to start budgeting for or include. That's the type of thing we can put in the work program. We only received 2 responses to that survey. And one was, yeah, this was interesting. And one was just kind of neutral. So give that sort of thing some thought as well. It looks like early data or early budget analysis looks like we might have some resources available to help fund those types of activities. Data, vendors and so forth like that. So if that's something you want us to do, we'll need to know that from you. We don't want to just put that in there and assume people will use it. We'd like to have some confirmation that that would be useful for you all. So please give that some thought too. And if you want more information about anything like that, just let us know. Next steps on this, we will come back to you next month, like I said, with more of a rough draft for what that budget will look like and work program will look like. That has to be approved in draft form in March. Then we'll send that off to the DOT. They'll get us comments back, and then we'll come back in May with a final document for you to approve. If there's any questions about any of this, please let me know. Happy to talk with anybody offline if you have ideas for projects or have questions about anything. I'm always happy to do that. But I'll pause here and take any questions or comments anybody has.
Thanks, Dylan. Any questions for Dylan?
Steve, I've got a question for Dylan. Kind of circling back on that survey. When was that sent out and by whom?
Gunnar can confirm with me, but I think it was sent out right after the meeting, maybe the day following the meeting in the post-meeting email.
Hi, John.
And we're happy to send that out again if we need to.
Hi, John. Yes, that was included in the post-meeting email. You'll recall we switched to Gov Delivery for our agendas as well as for the follow-up meeting emails. So hopefully you're still seeing those come through. If anyone's not seeing those, please let me know. And as Dylan mentioned, we'd be happy to put the survey out again on the post-meeting email this month.
Yeah, if you would, please, and if you could send a link directly to me I'm not sure if it got caught in the spam filters that we now have.
I'll do both, John. I'll do a separate email to you with a link, and then I'll also include it in the post-meeting email.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, any other questions for Dylan? All right, thanks, Dylan. All right, that takes us to item 10. And that's a report on the Norfolk Southern Rail Spur Track Assessment. Dylan, are you able to talk to this one as well?
Yes, I will do that. So this is an interesting project that has come to our attention, and it's something we've been talking with the Iowa DOT and a few other member communities about for the last couple of years. But the basics is that Iowa Interstate Railroad operates on the Norfolk Southern line. And if you go to the next slide, there's a map, and in the agenda packet, there's a map that shows you where that line is. So this is the line that runs, the highlighted line that runs basically west of downtown, up northwest through Windsor Heights, west of Moines and Grimes and Clive. The Iowa Interstate runs this line. It's currently owned by Norfolk Southern. Norfolk Southern is looking to possibly sell that line because it only has one freight user that goes up to Grimes maybe once a month. The company that owns the Iowa Interstate Railroad, Railroad Development Corp., RDC, also owns a company called Pop-Up Metro. And they have approached the Iowa DOT and the MPO about the potential to run passenger rail service on that line. And this is the model they have, is that they take these underutilized freight railroads or freight lines, and through Pop-Up Metro, their passenger rail service, they put in sort of temporary service using kind of these kits, they call them. So they kind of lease out these equipment, they lease out the rolling stock, the platforms, they have temporary parking structures they can put up, as not structures, but temporary parking lots they can put up as well, to demonstrate whether passenger rail service is viable. So we've had conversations about this. We're currently working with our member communities along the corridor. So if you haven't heard from us, we'll be reaching out to you. I know I've talked to a couple of the local communities already. We're also talking to developers, real estate community representatives, and so forth, who might benefit from having passenger rail service on that, just to see, is this something that our metro wants to pursue? If you go back to that next page, really the next slide, the next step in this process is to do a track assessment. There would have to be a couple, 2.5 miles or so of track put in more towards the southern end of this going into downtown. Once it gets on the spur, there's really not a lot of usage to it. But once you get down to that main line, it would be competing with freight rail. So they'd have to put in a parallel track so that it doesn't, interfere with the existing freight rail. And then there'd have to be probably upgrades to the track going up, along the corridor there. They'd also have to look at platforms and lighting and signage and, signals and so forth too. The estimated cost to do that analysis is about $25,000. So we've been talking, we spoke with the executive committee last month. We'll be talking with the policy committee later this month about whether, probably not the MPO solely, but the MPO in a partnership with others, the DOT might be willing to contribute to, is willing to put up that $25,000 to take the next step, get the assessment, and see if this is something that's viable. That $25,000 assessment would let us know what condition the track's in, what it would take to upgrade the track to necessary standards to allow for more. Basically, as you upgrade the track, it increases the speed at which the trains could travel. So it would tell us what the cost would be to get us to a point where the trains could travel at a frequency that makes sense for running passenger rail in the metro. And then that would in turn tell us what it would cost to run this. And the idea would be that we could run it for a year, 2 years, 3 years, just to see if this is viable. And the pitch from Pop-Up Metro is, for the cost of doing that and actually getting to see what it would run would be about the cost it would take for a engineering consultant to come in and give us an estimate of what it would take. So rather than doing an estimate, we would actually be able to see it in real life and understand what the results would be. If that's successful, then we would have to take the next steps to make it more permanent, which would require maybe federal grants and so forth. But just to back up, just the first step would be this $25,000 assessment. So we're bringing this to you today just to put this on your radar, let you know that this is out there. If there's questions, concerns, any interest in learning more about this, we're happy to share more. We're happy to bring you into this process. But really, we just wanted to bring this to your awareness. You might get questions from policy members as they start to hear about this, because this is pretty unique for our metro. It's not every day that the freight rail company comes to you and wants to run passenger rail. It's usually you're begging the other thing to happen. And if this doesn't happen, that line might be abandoned, then it becomes a rails to trails corridor too. So in either case, something might happen along this corridor that has a transportation impact. Figure it's worth the process, or it's worth it to explore the passenger rail first, and then we can always address the next steps if that doesn't pan out later. So again, I'll pause. If there's any questions, comments, concerns, what have you, I'm happy to take those. Otherwise, we'll keep you updated on what happens with this.
Thanks, Dylan. Does the assessment, would that not get into like where stops would be, would it?
I think that not the assessment itself, but having that assessment would then allow them to create a schedule of sorts of identifying of what the frequency would be, where stops would be, and that kind of thing. The assessment might come out and say it's going to take however many, hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, whatever, to upgrade the track. And we might decide, let's only upgrade the track for part of the way just to get it started, and let's see what happens. So that would indicate where the stops would be and so forth. So that's really the crucial first step to understand the next phase of what the frequency would be, what the schedules would look like, what the cost would be.
When do you need a response back, Dylan, on the $25,000 assessment? Is that something you're looking for from the policy committee then, or to authorize?
We'll be talking. Yeah, we're doing some homework in between now and the policy meeting to, like I said, I don't think it'll be the MPO paying the full 25,000. The executive committee said they weren't really interested in that. But we have had some interest from private sector folks that would be willing to contribute. So our hope is that by the policy meeting, we'll come back with a proposal of here's how we can split up that $25,000 pie and see if they want to move forward with it. In terms of the railroad's interest, we've been talking with them for a couple of years. I don't think they're going to walk away anytime soon. So if we need to discuss this over the next couple of months, I think they're willing to let us do that.
Questions for Dylan? All right. Thanks so much, Dylan. Any follow-up questions, if reach out to Dylan. That brings us to item number 11. This is a report on the Iowa Data Bike Regional Trails Pavement Condition Report. Carl, are you available to speak to that one?
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. So this summer we were able to get back out on the data bike, and we alternate between doing our regional and local trails. We do regional trails one year, and then the next year we'll do like a quadrant of the local trails. So this summer we spent the bulk of our resources on covering the entire regional trail network to the best that we could. There were some trail closures out there. There were some issues with some of the data collection that got corrupted. So a couple of the trails ended up not being able to get covered. But we did do over 250 miles of the Central Iowa Regional Trails this summer, which is about double what we've done in the past. Previously, we kept it just to the MPO planning boundary. However, this year we thought it would be better just to get the entire Central Iowa Regional Trails network. We made a couple improvements to the bike this year. So we improved the 360 camera, so that the photo that you see, you will see on the story map, and that has been updated, but we don't have good imagery of like what that looks like. But we now mount it to the top of the helmet to get in with a newer and improved GoPro 360 to get Google Street View, so you can actually click along Street View on our trails and see what the trails look like. So that would help with some inventory of sorts, or just help tourists be able to see what they're in for when they're coming to Central Iowa to use our trails. We also improved the rear camera for pavement photos, which are included on our interactive story map that we'll look at here in a bit. And just want to thank our intern from ISU that helped us with the bulk of that data collection. Next slide. So like I said, we did publish our data on the map. I will share the link to that. All right, so I did just share a link to our story map that will include everything about the data bike, as well as go into the results and allow you to interactively click around and look at pavement photo conditions. But here is kind of what the data looks like. from a bird's eye view, the bulk of our trails are in pretty good condition. However, there are some areas of the trail that are degrading and some that are rather rough. So Gunnar, I believe if you allow me to share my screen, I can kind of take you all through that down. Okay. So through that link, you'll get to this page, which is our story map. I've gone ahead and just skipped to what I believe everyone here would rather focus on in the trail conditions. So we can go through each regional trail, see how many miles of data were collected, as well as what the bulk of that trail surface condition looks like. So what the surface condition is the bike itself has an iPhone with an app that uses the accelerometer, and anytime a bump is incurred on the trail, it registers that and the severity of that bump. So you can imagine that there might be some anomalies in the data where you ride it and you might think that, oh, this is a rough section. But it's difficult for us to collect that data because the tires are only so wide, the trail is so wide. So we have limited data points that we're collecting. So as we continue to collect data, hopefully that data gets better. But we just have limited resources and ability to get the entire width of the trail covered. So this is the data that was collected, and you can kind of go through it, look at the specific trails that you are interested in and that pertain to your community. And hopefully you'll be able to use this data for maintenance projections and like how much trail might need to be replaced or resurfaced or fog sealed or what have you. A little bit of an overall map. Our trails are in rather good condition. 31.6% are very smooth. 61.9% are smooth. So the bulk of our trails are in rather good condition. 6.1% fair, so a little bit bumpy, down to 0.4% rough, and then 0 registered very rough. Again, from user experience, that might differ from what you would think. Some trails might have small segments that you would think are very rough. We're working on calibration to try and get some of those to measure up and be represented correctly. So if there is a trail segment that you think should be registered very rough, I'd like to hear it so that we can then calibrate the system on those segments of trail to get them to show very rough. Then as you continue to scroll down, you'll reach the interactive portion of the map. This shows you the trail segments from 2023. We have prior years as well that are available, but this is just the 2023 map. You can see all the trails that we covered and the pavement condition of those trails. So the brightest green blue color is very smooth. So that section of Raccoon River Valley Trail, that's all concrete, pretty much brand new. But there are some segments of it that, I guess this is all outside the MPO plan boundary. I'll look at something inside. But you'll be able to tell as you go, and you can zoom down into it, and then you'll get the heat map. The heat map shows where we detected the rear photo camera detected. Well, we currently do this with our eyes. We go through every photo that we take with the rear camera and say yes or no. Is there pavement distress in it or not? So that has nothing to do with the roughness. That is just a visual scan of the photo and then seeing, is there any distress in the pavement? So there might be a rather red section here. You can zoom down into it, and as you get closer, you'll see the photos pop up, and you can click on that photo and see the pavement condition, and there's some distress over in this area. So this will help you. You can use this data to help identify problem areas, check surface condition. We update this every other year for the regional trails, and then we'll do the locals next. Shoot, I can't get out of this. Okay, there we go. All right. So that's kind of the data bike in in a nutshell. I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone may have about the data bike. We'll be focusing on another quadrant of local trails next year, and we'll keep going and trying to make improvements to the system. One other thing we are working on with ISU is to automatically detect the severity of distress through that rear camera. So like I said, we're currently doing it manually where we just look at the photo and say yes or no. We're working with ISU to actually have a measurement of the severity of that distress, so we can give you roughness and then separately give you severity of distress from that rear camera in the future. So hopefully the data bike continues to improve and you all find it very useful.
Carl, when you said when you talk about local trails, is it like how do you determine which trails? Because is it like ones that are like on a certain system, like the Central Iowa Trail System, or is it?
That's right. Yep.
Okay.
So
All right.
the Central Iowa Trails, regional trails. So regional trails have a certain designation where they span more than one jurisdiction.
Okay.
Yep. So then when we talk about local trails, those are trails that are completely confined in one jurisdiction. So West Des Moines has a very robust local trail network that like aren't part of the regional trails
Right.
per se. So we do a quadrant of the MPO planning area every year because they're harder to because the regional trails span longer distances with just like one line, basically kind of like a transit line type of thing, where we can just ride from one end to the other and collect that entire trail. The regional trails are more spurs. They're they're shorter distances. They're harder to get transportation to and from with the data bike, so we can only do a quadrant at a time right now.
Yeah, but so like if we're say adding a 10-foot wide shared use path along Guthrie Avenue, just a local street, that would not be covered under this because that's not on the Central Iowa mapping.
Correct. It wouldn't be covered under this one. Right. It would be covered under our next report on local trails in that like northwest quadrant.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. Gunnar, I'm trying to get back to unshare my screen. I guess.
Carl, I think you're looking for a red button toward the top of your shared screen. It should say stop share.
Yeah. It is not popping up at the top of the screen like it normally does because apologies. Not a Zoom expert.
Right, mine moved to the bottom of the screen. I don't know if it matters, but and it does hide, and then when I scroll over the bottom, it kind of.
There. Okay. Thank you. All right. Sorry about that.
All right. Are there any questions for Carl on this effort? And again, Mary and Carl did post the link in the meeting chat there, so if you can swipe the link there.
And that'll be sent out in the post meeting minutes as well.
Yeah, very nice. Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Carl. All right, that brings us to item number 12, and Miriam kind of talked about this a little bit briefly earlier. So this is a report on the National Electrical Vehicle Infrastructure Formula Grant Program. Carl, are you able to talk to this item?
Yep. So I won't keep it too long just because Mid-Am did talk about this as well. But the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Formula Grant is now open. So that is the NEVI grant that Mid-America talked about earlier. This is aimed at increasing the DC fast charging along our interstate corridors. There's $17 to $27 million available for us to go after. And the deadline to apply will be March 13th. This will require a 20% contribution as a match for those projects. Next slide. So like this is the eligible applicants for this are for-profit businesses, privately owned electric utilities, nonprofit organizations, but it is encouraged that government entities and municipal utilities partner with them. And Mid-Am kind of talked to that in that process that we need to kind of go through as early as possible to make sure that we can get everything to get pulled together in time to apply. And then ineligible applicants or government entities as the primary applicant, as well as municipal utilities on their own. So our area is zone 11 for the MPO planning area. It does only apply to Interstate 35 and 80. 235 is excluded in this, and chargers must be located 1 mile from the interstate access point. So think just your normal exit. It has to be 1 mile from that exit, and then chargers are planned to be no more than 50 miles apart. So trying to decrease that range anxiety. And one thing that also might want to be considered is amenities in the area. So it does take a bit to charge a vehicle. Like Mid-American mentioned, these are about 150 kilowatt chargers, and it'll take about 40 minutes to fully charge a vehicle. So having amenities nearby that people can either recreate, shop, eat is a bonus to those type of charging locations. So I believe that might be the last slide, Gunnar. So I'll take any questions with that if anyone has any.
Thanks, Carl. Is there any questions for Carl? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, Carl. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, that takes us to item number 13. This is a report on the search for an executive director. Gunnar, are you able to talk to this one, please?
Yes, in the interest of keeping everyone up to date on the process to find an executive director, last month we reported that the policy committee would be considering the hiring of local firms to conduct the search. They did indeed go ahead with that. To the Top, in partnership with Deibler and Company, will be leading the search process, and they've already gotten underway. I believe everyone on the committee should have received a survey from them, and there was really strong participation in that survey, 22 responses to that survey. So thank you to everyone who participated. And that input is being used for the development of a new job description, interview questions, and the overall process. The search committee is meeting here later this morning at 11 o'clock in our office, and they're going to be working to review and approve the job description, posting, and announcements. They've all been developed and should be deployed starting next week on Monday, if all goes according to plan. The overall timeline is we're on track on the timeline. Hope to post the position on January 8th. That's on Monday. It'll stay open for 3 weeks. And then in February, finalists will be selected and interviewed by the search committee. And there's a day on February 15th where the policy committee will potentially vote on a finalist and as well as initiate an initial offer. Then that contract negotiation period is set aside for February and March. And it is anticipated that the executive director would start no later than April. So we do have a more detailed summary of the timeline and progress to date. And if anyone's interested, I'll be happy to share that with you individually, or if the committee would desire, I can include that in the post-meeting email. But that's the overall update. I'd be happy to take any questions you might have.
Thanks, Gunnar. Are there any questions for Gunnar? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, Gunnar. All right, that takes us to item 14, upcoming events. Z, are you able to talk to this one?
Yep, thank you. So we have a variety of webinars and upcoming events for you. Most of these are available in the agenda packet, but I would like to highlight 2 upcoming webinars, not for this month, but for next month. So in February, City of Des Moines Parks and Rec will be talking about the systematic condition analysis and management of the trail system. We've heard a little bit from their presentation at Bike Ped Roundtable, and it was very good. So I would highly recommend others in the Metro to tune in to that webinar in February. And also in February, APA Iowa Planning on Tap is having a session on Denver's e-bike rebate program. So that's been a pretty popular and successful program, and we hope to hear more about that program and maybe implement something similar in our own metro area or state. If you have any questions on these upcoming events, I'll be happy to take them.
Thanks, Z. Any questions for Z? Okay, hearing none, that brings us to item 15. Other non-action items of interest to the committee.
Steve, I'll jump in with one real quick one. Earlier, we referenced a survey regarding the transportation data vendors. I posted that link in the chat. So if everyone wanted to open their chat real quick and pull that link, you have that. We will also include it in the post meeting email, but just want to let you know it is there for you to grab right now.
Thank you.
I've got one quick one, Steve. Just wanted to remind everyone that the SDBG applications are due by the end of the day tomorrow. If anybody's having any issues hitting that timeline, please let me know. Just reach out to me and we can work through that. Also, just let you know that we are working to schedule the presentations as well, and we'll get you that date as soon as we've confirmed it.
Thanks, Zach.
Steve, one quick one for me real quick here too. I know this month is the first of some new appointments potentially, so I'm not sure how many new tech members we have. But once we get all those in, we're still getting some of those appointments being made by city councils and so forth now. We'll reach out and make sure we meet with new members. We might also do a more of a wider orientation session at some point. So be on the lookout for new introduction, invitations for that. If anybody wants, even if you've been on the board for a while and you want a refresher, want an orientation, feel free to reach out to us at any time, and we're happy to sit down and meet with anybody about what the MPO is and what we do and that sort of thing. I also, not to end on a down note, just want to acknowledge the situation going on in Perry at the moment, and hopefully nobody here is affected by that, but I know it's likely that people know people and people lived outside the metro, and that's pretty close to us, so hopefully everybody's doing okay with that today.
Thanks, Dylan. Very scary. I had an individual leave that had a student at the school leave a meeting earlier this morning for that. So terrifying. Okay. I would like to know, if there's anyone that I think my term is approaching the end here. So if anyone is interested in being on the nominating committee to find the new chair and vice chair, please reach out to me or speak up. Otherwise, if I don't get any volunteers, I may have to reach out to you to request help. So again, looking for folks to be on the nominating committee for the chair and vice chair. So all right. That brings us to item 16. And that's that's our December 7th agenda. That's up on the screen. But item 16 is the next meeting date, February 1st, 2024 at 9:30 usual time. So so that brings us to the end of our agenda. Hearing none, we'll consider this meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Thank you.